Today, we're kicking off part 1 of our series, All Girls for One Deku. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content in the future. The author of this story is AzureGigacyber from Archive of Our Own. All the relevant links are in the description. Feel free to say hello to the author on their profile. Now, let's dive into the fanfic. In a world where Toshinori, aka All Might, was the bearer of one for all before Nana Shimura, a still living and spiteful All for One dwells in hiding place, plotting his revenge against hero society as a whole. The last battle between himself and the previous symbol of peace left him horribly scarred, broken, and deprived of many of his stolen quirks. To get back at her, and heroes in general, for destroying his body and ruining his empire, FO seeks out a progeny to mold into his successor. It was the current more modern year with up-and-coming heroes like MT Lady and Kamui Woods taking the spotlight of heroism. Nana remains at the top as the current symbol of peace known as Gal Might, inspiring many newer heroes with smiles, charisma, and unmatched ferocity. Among the pro-heroes, as well as many promising new students heading to UA, many of them were female, and the villainous mastermind has crafted a way of turning that strength against them. By bestowing a very dangerous and very specific quirk, they would be kneeling at his new successor's knees. But first he had to seek him out. With one good visible eye showing through the marred portion of his unrecognizable face, he saw him, the boy on the news. Izuku Midoriya, a rare quirkless child who had been beaten down so much in spirit by the reality around him, wonders if he could even be a hero. Inside of him there holds plenty of passive resentment towards lucky ones that get blessed with powerful quirks like his schoolyard bully. Though he wouldn't say it, Izuku had a sorrowful amount of envy for the many that have powers unlike him. This was seen by the former symbol of evil, All for One. As of now, he was currently in hiding watching many news events from the screens in front of him. Izuku's face crosses the most recent report of a sludge villain attack where he was a hostage victim. Next to him was the current symbol of peace and holder of one for all, Nana Shimura. This boy may be the key in bringing hero society under his thrall. I can see it. His smile was wide and toothy when he remembered having special quirk he stole from a rather undeserving lecher. It was a very special one that had practically no use to him because of his dying condition, but it was essential in implementing his plans, namely his last will. The current bearer of one for all, Nana Shimura, is still a robust woman in her prime. I see. She, like many of the female pro-heroes, are susceptible to this quirk. Who's to say young and promising student heroes are off limits? There are so many potentials coming out of the woodwork these days. This quirk will take their strength and use it against them. Let's see, among the current generation of pros there is Mount Lady, Maruko, Bubble Girl, Miss Joke, Midnight, Dragon Lady, and any promising young girls of the UA Academy and beyond. All of them are ripe for the picking. All that is needed is a successor. My time runs short. All Might certainly doomed me to a miserable and slow death after our final fight against each other. A foe thought to himself while wondering who he could give it to that would then work as his promising successor. Flipping through another reported rescuing by Nana Shimura Ofa, he saw it. He saw a young boy by the age of 15 wearing fluffy green hair and looking frazzled by the robust woman saving him. He wanted to chuckle after seeing his face and knew the boy to be a pervert for the woman's large bosoms. Ah, to be young again. Hello, what's this? He thought with a rise in interest. He read more of the article and saw that the boy was mentioned to be quirkless. Nana said she found him getting bullied by other kids for not having said gift. This was right around the time that sludge villain attacked him. Something inside a foe clicked when he saw the boy. Despite the whimpering look of self-pity and sadness, he saw a sort of envious look he had when other heroes gathered around them. He saw that the boy certainly looked up to Nana Shimura as well. Aside from his blushing when she pulled him close to her side, the boy had an unseen grimace at being touted as a victim from the attack. It was obvious, so much so, that he wanted to be like the heroes he admired. He had seen that pitiful face many times back during the glory days of his empire. Before All Might and the era of peace as they called it, it was the face of a person who had no power in a world full of quirk users and hated himself for it. Many days back during his glorious rise to power, a foe had given to so many the tools to fight back against more rowdy villains that were undeserving of their gifts. T was chaos all around, and it was up to him to establish order by creating an empire and controlling all of his gangs and bringing common citizens under his protection. He was creating a haven for them all to frolic without rules or principles. All they needed to do was pledge undying loyalty to him. Was that really so much to ask? And then he came, All Might. Their first battle was so intense it even decimated an entire city block in the process. But their long fight over the years had come to a climactic end some time back. A foe reached up to his face, caressing his fingers along the marred flesh that was once a normal, handsome-looking man. All Might was ruthless in punishing him and all of his followers for being evil, all right. It was fortunate that he had stolen a regeneration quirk. When he did otherwise, he'd leave the land of the living. However, it wasn't enough to heal the tissue damaged beyond repair, nor could it bring back all the quirks he had stolen from him when he supposedly died. On top of all of that, a foe was on a time limit. The damage was so extensive it had compromised everything inside his body that had been keeping him alive all these years. His time was coming to an end very soon now, and he had been looking for a protege to take up his mantle. All Might has passed down the mantle of Ofa to that Nana Shimura, a popular, enthusiastic woman in her prime, becoming as famous and inspiring as All Might himself did back then. Like a natural-born superhero. He thought to himself when watching the videos of the young boy looking on enviously at Nana while avoiding the cameras zooming in on him. I need a protege. It might be time to pay a visit to this Midoriya child. I can sense great promise within him. With that, a foe got up and walked over to put on a disguise in the form of a breathing mask before going out of his secluded base. Though it couldn't be seen, he had a wide smile on the unmarred portion of his face. He knew what kind of quirk to give a potentially libido-charged lad aching for a woman's touch, as well as the power to be a hero. With his idea in mind, he could have both and become a legend the villainous mastermind could be proud of. He'll make him one yet, a hero to end all others and succeed him in taking control over society in his place. Walking his way home after All Might, which was Nana Shimura's hero name, escorted him safely to his neighborhood, Deku walked without a thought in his head. He had long since abandoned his dream of becoming a hero like the legendary All Might, and the inspiring Gal might due to him being quirkless. Once the doctor told him to give up his dream so many years ago, he initially didn't want to, and just went moving forward with some faint hope he would awaken his quirk late. But no such luck. He was looked down on by others after hearing about his status and goal much of his life. He even tried helping out his former friend Bakugo when he fell into the river during grade school. Since then he's known nothing but disdain from him, and always bullies Izuku if he so much as spouts his hero goal. When he first gave up on his dream, he was teary-eyed and wanted nothing more than to fade away, but he kept it hidden and bottled up inside. Hid those feelings from his mother, which thankfully convinced her he had moved on and didn't despair over it. Izuku worried she'd stress eat if he did and would somehow blame herself for her genetics if he showed her how broken he was about it. To this day she was still in top shape and physically active. She was attractive and youthful, rivaling Bakugo's mother Mitsuki. Inko often encouraged him to work out with her whenever he isn't studying. Izuku admired her spirit and loved her enthusiasm. His father may as well have not even existed, or could just be a stranger for all he knew. He didn't care. His only goal in life was to become a hero, but it seemed it wasn't in the cards for old Deku. I guess I could always become a police officer or something, he mumbled to himself, keeping his head hanging low until he saw a shadowy figure straight ahead of him. Izuku squinted his eyes and couldn't make out who it was. He just assumed it was a random passerby until he spoke. "It's not fair, is it, lad?" For so many to have such wondrous powers and for society to cast the unlucky few like yourself down the well of Darwinism. It seems your luck is rather awful, at least, until now. The man spoke in a dark, calm voice that sent shivers up Izuku's spine. "AW, who are you? If you'll excuse me, I need to be heading home," Izuku let out, clearly panicked, and attempted to take a detour to avoid him until he spoke again. "You can't match heroes in society without a quirk, my boy. It's quite an unfair game they play with plenty like yourself being at the bottom of the barrel. I suppose I'm prattling, but my point is, wouldn't it be nice to have a powerful quirk of your own? They aren't strictly limited to something you're born with. Quirks can be given, and I have the power to do that." Izuku stopped in his tracks when hearing that. Suddenly his desires to have a quirk welled up stronger than ever when the words hit his ears. A strong impulse to talk to this scary stranger compelled him to stay frozen in mid-walk and turn his attention to him, eager to listen. "Q quirks can be given?" he asked, innocently feeling that all he knew before was a lie. The shadowy man nodded, his features still obscured by the sunset shining behind his back. "They can, and I want to give you one, Izuku." The moment he said this, Izuku felt two kinds of chills up his spine, one being that this dark stranger somehow knew his name, and the other being the possibility of finally obtaining a superpower. Ambition and insecurity override his sense of precaution at this moment. But Izuku was still weary of this, for it sounded too good to be true. "Why would you want to give me a quirk? It certainly sounds very appealing, but I don't think I can't trust you, Mr." The shrouded head nodded in understanding. "You don't have to, son, just trust in my ability to bestow it upon you. When I look at you, I see a boy who's been denied so much so heartlessly, but I also see potential to lead and gather people together and have them pledging undying fealty to you. Namely those of the female variety. I know that you're a young boy and quite interested in the ladies, if your expressions around Galmite is anything to go by," he accused, amusedly, making Izuku blush. "Well, that was," Izuku stammered out, and suddenly felt frozen in his place when the dark-clad man pointed at him. He couldn't move a muscle and suddenly feared for his life, believing he may have signed his death warrant by talking to an obviously shady stranger. "My body, I can't move an inch." The man stepped forward to him casually and was within a foot's length of the young middle schooler boy. Deku felt petrified in soul as he was in body as he raised a hand above his head. "I'm afraid we don't have time for this idle chit-chat. I can sense Galmite is nearby and may have caught wind of my presence here. Now, I will bestow upon you my gift, a very special quirk in which you could amass great power and gather a following of very special consorts." He chuckled darkly, and Izuku felt a strange buzzing in his head as his body felt a change. Somewhere down below his pants there came to be a growth of some kind to his member, and suddenly Izuku felt some dark impulses well up inside of him, along with an abundance of newfound energy and clarity he couldn't explain. "I originally stole this quirk as payment from an infamous lecher who garnered a reputation of stealing other people's women. When he got too ambitious and stupid, it came back to haunt him, and thus he was chased with looming death by a crowd of angry people. I trust you'll use it wisely. He came to me for sanctuary and a means of escape. Thus I deprived him of his dark gift in return for a quirk that'll allow him to hide away from it all like a hermit. It isn't mind control in any sense, more like indoctrination of a sort, or rather inspiration. With this you could inspire others to follow you, devote themselves to you 100% and beyond, and give you everything you could ever desire. Even their bodies, but with it comes rather dark impulses, so do try to control yourself, okay?" He spoke and removed his hand away from Izuku's head and began walking away from him. He released the paralysis the boy felt over his body and found his limbs moving again. Izuku let out a ragged gasp and stood doubled over, holding his hands against his knees, feeling the aftershock of the terror he just felt. The terror of death, but then he looked up at the masked stranger and felt a strange sort of kinship between himself and the guy. "What, Huff? What did you do to me? I feel so different," Izuku said, looking at his hands and wondering what changed. "I feel powerful for some reason." The man simply smirked behind his dark mask, not that Izuku could see it, until he heard a woman shout in the distance, "All for one, leave that kid alone." Izuku was then startled and turned around to see Gal Might herself boosting onto the scene and tackling the strange man into a nearby wall of cement. The same created an intense impact that shook the area a little, making Izuku stare in wonder at her as she held against the wall with an arm pushing into his neck. She's not wearing her trademark smile. She always wears it when she's saving people. Is he her arch nemesis? Izuku thought, still feeling floored by whatever new thing inside his body the man put in. When he looked at Gal Might, he felt a sense of dark longing and perverse hunger build up inside of him. The feeling he'd get when staring at a raunchy midnight figure was there times 100. Normally he'd never eyeball women that way, but for some reason or another his green eyes roamed all over Gal Might's voluptuous form through her clothing while her cape billowed slightly. "Ha ha ha ha, looks like you have finally caught me, Nana Shimura. I suppose a hero always catches the villain right around the end, right? You even found me before I committed the evil act. My applause goes out to the great and popular Gal Might." He chuckled darkly and made no effort to move from her grasp. Part of it was because of how much overwhelming strength she was using, and another part was because a foe simply did not care. His work was done here as far as he was concerned. "What are you after? Why come out of hiding after all these years, and what were you doing to that boy? Were you trying to kidnap him or worse, turn him into a Naomu?" she asked with gritted teeth and a fierce glare that shook Izuku to his core. The man simply chuckled again and was pulled out of the imprint and forced into the ground. "You would not believe if I simply told you I was actually just talking to him, Shimura. My time in life is growing shorter by the second, and I simply came out into the light to witness the promising newer generation flourish." He added, making her flinch in realization, and took a look at his decrepit body growing weaker every minute. "Wait, you're dying?" she asked, astounded, and he simply nodded without care. "Your predecessor, All Might, was very thorough in putting an end to me finally after our last battle. I could only live these years on borrowed time, and it seems I've reached the end of my lifespan. Do not worry, I have no more strength in me left to fight you anymore. You heroes can enjoy an era of peace without worrying about me." A foe chuckled softly, with Nana still glaring suspiciously at him before whipping out her phone and dialing in the police to come take him. "Predecessor? All Might? Just what is he going on about? And what has happened to my body? I feel different." Izuku wondered as he stared at his hands again and noticed his pants felt tighter as a large bulge seemed to be visible through the crotch region. He blushed and yelped, quickly covering it up as Nana held him there until the police arrived. Afterward they came out in groups with Quirk nullification gear and carefully hauled the dark man away into a carrier. But before he did, he tossed his head back and looked straight at Izuku with a proud smile. The boy never felt so afraid and confused, but once he was out of sight being taken away to prison, he noticed he was left alone with Gal Might standing a few feet away with her hands on her hips, as was her signature posture. He was obviously full of it when I cornered him. What could have him in such a delighted mood while he's on death's doorstep? I don't understand any of it. He must have done something before he gave himself up. Can't figure that lunatic out worth a damn. She thought before letting out a sigh and turning to face Izuku with her trademark shining smile. Really scary time there, eh? Hope that bad man didn't hurt or do anything to you before I got here. Izuku couldn't help but shake his head with a smile and gushed at her like the fanboy he was before, whipping out his notebook with pen ready. "And no, he didn't hurt me or anything like that, but please, can I have your autograph? You and All Might were my inspiration since I was a child." Izuku gushed out, making her laugh merrily in spirit while her chest bounced along with her heaving shoulders. He blushed out blood when keeping his eyes on those firm large melons. "Ha ha, of course, little fella. Always happy to be asked by a fan." Nana responded with an infectious yet sweet smile as she walked over to Izuku and grabbed a pen from his offered hand. The second he took it, Nana winced when a strange sensation flowed through her body. She blinked, then felt her fingers tremble around the pen as the strange intensified through her body, overtaking her mind and putting her into a trance-like state. Izuku looked at her awkwardly in worry and felt his crotch stiffen up in response to the quirk activation he didn't know he had done. Nana drifted back from her place, staring at Izuku strange and feeling a special feeling well up inside her chest. She became short of breath and started panting hotly like she just ran across the country and felt her entire being want to be around Izuku 24/7 and serve him in every way possible. What is this? Did something happen to me? Why can't I get this boy out of my mind? I see him and suddenly everything inside of me wants to get on my knees and worship him. Something's happened, and I think it might be something like mind control. Nana's mind raced as he felt hot and bothered the longer she stood there. Her mind went back to a foe, and suddenly it all made sense while he was in a good mood despite being taken away. That man did something, I know it. But what did he put into this boy? She questioned until Izuku spoke up innocently, making her stir with need even more. Hey, are you okay? You just froze up right there. If you want, I can ask for an autograph some other time, Izuku questioned, further activating the quirk without realizing it. Suddenly Nana felt her body shake with desire, with longing, with grand need to serve the boy as her new master. But above all, she wanted to taste him. Her tongue found its way around her lips as her eyes leered seductively at him as her posture relaxed. As of now, she was no longer in inner turmoil. Instead, she was completely fine as the quirk's effect of absolute devotion ran its course, fully claiming Nana Shimura. And no, it's fine, kiddo. Say, how about I walk you to your house? You don't live far from here, right? I'd feel much better knowing that you're safe and sound. There, I'll give you that autograph you wanted. Nana suggested, making Izuku smile giddily before putting his notebook away. Give you that, and then some, sweet boy. Sure, follow me then, it's right around this corner. Izuku pumped excitedly, leading her with him to his house, unaware of the dark urges growing stronger with each passing second inside of him. Little did he know he had already ensnared one person to his dark new claim, and it was the symbol of peace herself, as was a foe's plan. Arriving at his home and opening the door using his house key, Izuku was about to wave goodbye to Nana, only to be surprised by her statement that she wanted to come in with him. Not being one to question his fortune, he went along with it and took off his shoes. I'm home, he announced as he went inside with her following behind him. Nana took off her boots as well and continued watching Izuku's back while the ever-growing fascination with him remained in her heart. Mom, are you here? He announced again, receiving no response, and shrugged. I guess she's out shopping for groceries. He then turned back to Nana with a chipper smile. Mind if I show you my room? He asked excitedly, not knowing she was feeling extremely frisky upon hearing that. Yes, this is it. Nana thought to herself, barely containing her lust for her new object of affection. Certainly, I assume there's lots of All Might paraphernalia in there? Izuku blushed and stammered, nodding as he led her down the hallway to his bedroom door. Nana smirked when she saw the All Might-themed door posting with Izuku's name on it. He opened it up, revealing a plethora of All Might-themed merchandise that she found simply adorable. This kid sure is a fanboy all right, but now he's mine, she thought darkly as Izuku went into the room ahead of her, leaving her to close the door behind and lock themselves in, giving them a sense of privacy. I know it's kinda geeky, but I really wanted to show it to you for some reason, Izuku admitted, blushing heavily while scratching his cheek. Izuku then turned around to pick up a notebook reserved for hero signatures. When doing this, Nana zipped down the front of her costume and undid her cape from her shoulders with a tongue sliding across her lips. I know you have lots of heroing to do, so after sign GKK. Izuku stammered and cut off mid-sentence once he saw that Nana was undressing in front of him. His face became redder than a tomato and his eyes found themselves glued to her chest once her robust E-cup bosoms bounced freely exposed. What are you doing?" he stammered out, feeling his crotch tighten up sharply within his pants. Nana ignored him and continued taking off all her clothing in front of the boy, revealing that she wore no undergarments. She went full commando whenever in her hero outfit and loved the effect it had on Izuku once she was completely naked in front of him. "She's so fit and beautiful." Nana Shimura indeed had a very healthy and fit body. Her shoulders and arms showed more well-defined muscle than one would expect from an actual pro wrestler. She was muscular, but not overly so. She still had a very feminine figure with a slim waist and wide baby-bearing hips at her disposal. Her bosoms were easily a large E-cup, firm and fit like the rest of her body. No sag whatsoever. Her face, while youthful-looking and full of spirit, was beautiful and alluring. She undid the tie in her hair, allowing all of it to fall free around her neck, with a few bangs draping over a side of her face. Her mound was lightly tufted in dark pubic hair. Her legs were long and perfectly in curvy elegant shape like the rest of her, and her butt was as supple and fit as possible. She was perfect. "Getting more comfortable. After all, I want to serve you a lot more faithfully with everything I have, which includes my body," she answered in a purr before approaching him and forcing him back onto the bed. Izuku felt his member throb more strongly inside his pants as she crawled up to him, hovering her naked body over his clothed form. She purred with a husky breath and cupped Izuku's face into her right hand, enabling him to stare into her blue eyes hypnotically before leaning down to press her lips onto his face. The moment she did, alarm bells rang off inside Izuku's mind, and he felt like he would die from a heart attack. He was actually kissing Gal Might. He, of all people, was getting seduced by a world-famous hero. "This is amazing. I can't believe this is happening to me." His inner fanboy gushed until his mind became more entrenched in growing lust the longer the keys went on. Slowly lowering his eyes to a close, he relaxed and melted into the lip lock, feeling Nana's adult mouth on his face hungrily. Her lips squeezed his young lips with unbridled passion and longing. She cupped his face into both of her hands now while pressing her naked body further onto his smaller frame. Nana purred in sharp arousal once she felt his erection rise up through his pants, creating a painful tent of clothing restraining it from getting out. "MMHHHH," she purred openly as their tongues soon danced together in heater passion. She wetly pried open Izuku's mouth, tasting him using her tongue, and ran it down his throat, determined to drink all of him in. Her right hand left his face and trailed down his body, feeling it up as she went. Her fingers found the zipper of his pants, and without hesitation, she pulled it down, revealing the surprise of a throbbing length matching literally 12.5 inches in measurement. "Ha! Amazing! Oh, how I can't wait for this, Midoriya!" Nana crooned out, feeling greatly aroused and thirsty for the boy's seed. In more ways than one. Izuku looked down in surprise and shock as he got a glimpse of his long, thick erection standing at full glory. "What the? That's never been that size before. What is going on?" Izuku freaked out until he felt the firm, smooth fingers of Nana's right hand grip around his member. The soft feeling of her fingers made him flinch and toss his head back onto the pillow in reaction. "It's so soft." Nana smirked and leaned up to quickly place a sweet kiss on his lips before leaving his face and lowering herself down to his waist. "Then you're gonna love this, master," she purred seductively, making Izuku pop an eyebrow in confusion as to why he was called master. But then the warm, wet confines of her mouth surrounded his length, pulling half of his mighty member into her throat. "Ha!" Izuku groaned out, feeling the sensation of her wet, warm mouth wrap around his length snugly, with lips squeezing tightly around the surface. Nana's eyes peered up at him from below, and slowly she started working her head up and down the portion of member sheathed inside of her mouth. "HHH, HHH&M." She hummed and purred as her head bobbed steadily in up and down pace. Her hands came around the bottom hilt of his member, gripping it tightly while she worked herself on his beefy member. Nana mewed inwardly in sensation, with closed her eyes, relishing the taste of his young teenage member pushing into her esophagus. Izuku yelped out loudly again in pleasure. He felt the wet, slimy sensation of her mouth, swallowing in more of his length as Nana began bobbing her head, more rampantly shaking the bed in the process. She hummed out in taste again and pursed her wet lips tightly along his length, running her tongue around the amount of length inside her throat, furthering Izuku's sense of pleasure. He had never thought he'd do this in reality, and found his hands wrapping around her head as she humped her face into his hips. MMH, MH, MMH, MH, MH, MMHHHHH. Nana hummed warmly as she pumped her mouth entirely onto the young teen's member. She slobbered all over it, ran her tongue all around and underside, even played with his surprisingly bloated orbs as she SCK'd him off for several more minutes. Izuku felt his climax approach and wound up gripping the back of her head, pushing her face further into his crotch, causing all of his length to reach the back of Nana's throat before bursting. He let out a loud voice of pleasure and felt his orbs begin to throb loudly before churning out a thick, gooey payload of came to erupt into her throat. "Hag! Here it comes! Something see coming out!" he yelled out with face flustered in bliss. Nana simply sealed her lips tightly around the base of his, keeping all of his member completely inside her mouth as he erupted. Thick ropes of heavily potent seed came out of his member and splashed down Nana's throat in abundance. The moment she tasted it, her eyes watered in a dream-like state of euphoria, relishing the taste of Izuku's seed as she chugged everything down. To her surprise, Izuku came hard and near constantly. Thick ropes just came pumping out into her esophagus, making her take everything like it were a protein shake. "Ooh, so good! I can't live without this stuff. I must have it every day," Nana thought to herself with an climaxing state of mind at this moment. More and more seed down her throat, giving her a full stomach of Midoriya's nutsack contents. Izuku came for about another minute when he finally stopped. Nana slowly pulled from his waist, draping her wet, sticky lips slowly off of his length, and became surprised by the fact he was still hard. Izuku had not lost an inch in rigidity, and seeing his lubricated erection sticking up prompted the legendary woman to rise to her feet and hunch over him. "Gal might?" Izuku asked, feeling his heart racing after that monumental moment of ejaculating inside of the hero's mouth. He looked up and saw her wearing a purely lustful expression on her face as she stood crouching over his erection readily. Reaching down, she gently gripped his long, turgid phallus and lined it up with her quivering pair of moist bottom lips before slumping herself down on it, taking him all in. "Giga!" he let out as the slippery tight sensation of her down there engulfed the entirety of his meat in one fell swoop. Izuku had no idea about this kind of pleasure up until now, but felt an unwavering tightness of pure moist muscle clenching around his length as it buried itself all the way into her body. Nana placed her hands upon his chest, steadying herself and resting her knees around his sides, giving her a steady position in which to FCK herself on the young boy. "This feels so amazing. Ah, I can't believe I'm having sex with Gal Might," Izuku thought, feeling exhilarated and allowing the dark power of absolute devotion influence his mind some more after getting the touch of pleasure from this prime specimen of a woman. "That's it, Izuku Midoriya. This is for you, all for you. I will devote my entire body and resources to you so long as you love me like this plenty." Nana purred out with a purely ecstatic smile on her face as she grabbed each of his hands and pulled them up to her bosoms, allowing Izuku to play with them. He took to the invitation instantly and started grabbing onto them fondly. His fingers squeezed and kneaded her bountiful melons, making her stir and sound as she started bouncing herself up and down his length. Her buttocks slapped hard against his thighs as her body started hammering itself down upon his waist, determined to get his meat all the way inside of her body. Nana shook with ecstasy as she felt her walls stretch and tighten around Izuku's length. It reached far and deep, pushing against her cervix and threatening to press into her womb. "Ha! Ah! Ooh! Izuku darling, FCK me, NNGGHH. Nana sounded out delirious with bliss as she started rolling her waist along Izuku's pelvis, more fluidly taking him in deeply and stroking his entire length with her cunt. Her muscles squeezed and tugged on the boy's length, making him feel the tightness overwhelm his senses as Nana bounced frenziedly on top of him. A chorus of skin-smacking noises soon filled the room along with her loud voice. Meanwhile, outside the room, Inko Midoriya had just gotten home and put her multiple bags of groceries down onto the table. She noticed her son's shoes as well as a pair of boots completely unfamiliar to her. I wonder who he brought with him. Maybe I should go check on my darling Izuku to see if he's all right, Inko questioned as she walked down the hallway in the direction of her son's bedroom. She was about to grip the doorknob and open it when she heard him sound out loudly in pleasure from the other side. Ha, ooh wow, gal mite. He groaned out from behind the door, making Inko's face redden until it matched the tomatoes she purchased earlier. Her lips tightened and her eyes became spirals. She quivered in her place when the reality hit her that Izuku might have been climaxed for the first time ever. I should give him some privacy. No, wait. I must see if he's really with a girl first. As a mother, I have to know for certain, Inko thought to herself, quickly taking out her master key and quietly unlocking Izuku's door. Quietly opening it a little and peeking through the view space, she saw a most shocking sight Inko has ever seen. A full-grown woman bouncing herself up and down on her teenage son's member. She covered up her mouth and felt her blush intensify as the sight of this beautiful stranger bouncing feverishly on Izuku's member hypnotized her into staring. Ooh, ah, oh yes, Izu-kun darling, ooh ah. Nana hollered out as bit her lower lips in euphoria as Izuku continued to grab her bosoms into his hands, fondling them passionately. His fingers squeezed and groped those glorious mounds while Nana continued frantically bouncing herself along his waist. She was being insanely sensitive to pleasure at this moment and found herself coming closer and closer to achieving climax. Izuku's length had breached her deeply, even going as far as touching her very womb itself. She felt crazed with lust and wondered if she should let him come inside her on a risky day. The thought titillated Nana greatly, and to that end she had only one answer: yes. Feeling the perverse thrill of satisfying her lover, she also cherished the thought of bearing his child and going into retirement to raise it. Though another part of her weighed the importance of having a successor for one for all. Looking down at Izuku's impassioned face, sitting up to SCK on her bosom, Nana felt she had found it. She pursed her lips together and tossed her head back, sounding loudly once his lips on one of her bosom. Her tat rolled between his lips as his tongue lathered it. His right hand came up to fondle the other one, leading to Nana wrapping her arms around his back and pulling him into a deep tongue-probing kiss. Izuku felt the dark impulses he was feeling allow him to give into this taboo moment of bliss. He kissed Nana back just as hard and wrapped his arms around her nicely muscled backside. She pulled him closer and swirled her tongue around inside his throat with unbridled passion for a few minutes before rolling over. With a tumble and shift to their position, she was on bottom and Izuku was on top, pumping into her body steadily. Wet skin smacking noises continued to echo throughout the room as Inko watched it all happen before her eyes. She had no idea why she was rooted there, but she did know she couldn't take her eyes off any of it. For some reason she felt a dark nudge of longing course through her body from the extent of Izuku's quirk range reaching her. Then the single and physically beautifully mother of one reached underneath her skirt and dug her fingers in past her. The scene of her son rolling his hips powerfully into Nana's body missionary style. The woman's legs came up around his lower waist, pulling him in deeper and allowing his massive member to penetrate her womb entirely. Nana hummed out loudly and held onto him for dear life, feeling his hips rapidly FCK her down right there on the bed. Wet skin slapping noises echoed even faster, with the older woman's voices becoming more prevalent. She closed her eyes and held her mouth agape in silent euphoria. She was beginning to feel her walls climax hard around Izuku's member. The young boy was putting in the frenzied effort now and savagely pumped his meat into her sopping cunt. Breed me, ooh-ah. Nana hollered out, wrapping her toned arms around Izuku's shoulders, careful not to crush him as her legs locked around his waist tightly prior to her body writhing in climax. GGGRKKHH. Izuku grunted loudly and felt his young body tense up as he felt her walls repeatedly convulse around his length, pushing him over the edge with climax himself. He bucked hard and fast into Nana's frame, feeling her vessel squeeze his length for all it was worth, and thereby causing his orbs to churn out another thick helping of came. Izuku clenched his teeth and held her closely as their bodies writhed together in sweaty bliss as his seed pumped out in abundance, piercing her womb. Nana came hard again and held him close and lovingly before pulling his face onto her lips for another raunchy tongue-probing embrace between woman and boy. Izuku's body bounced and rocked back and forth, again and again, letting all of his seed shoot out, emptying into her womb. Nana felt jitters of excitement and pleasure as he steadily filled her up. "It's so much, I'm probably going to be pregnant." Nana internally squealed out in delight as Izuku continued pumping his seed deep into the recesses of her body, filling up her womb to the point of creating a small bulge from stomach. "Ah, da, ooh yeah," Nana uttered out in bliss as she came down from her climaxing high with young Midoriya in tow. He settled down as he finished coming her insides and rested on top of her body with head resting between her large bosoms. Both of them were heaving loudly in sweaty bliss, unaware of Inko Midoriya laying slumped against the wall just across from Izuku's doorway, and a pool of liquid came puddled underneath her body. She was panting as well, still in disbelief that she had just climaxed to watching her son FCK and possibly impregnate an older woman, nay, the most popular here in the world right now. Both Midoriyas felt it was such a surreal reality, a dream that randomly took place. But somewhere far away, a dying foe smirked toothily in victory from his cell. Panting as they rested nakedly on top of each other, Izuku pulled up from Nana's body and looked her straight in the face with an uncharacteristically hungry expression before thoughts of other female heroes crossed his mind. More. I want to do this more. But I want to also be a hero that helps people. I'm so confused on what to do with myself right now. Izuku thought to himself, still keeping some rationale despite the dark hunger that now fueled half of his thoughts. Just then Nana Shimada did something unexpected and plucked out a hair strand from the top of her head and held it out for Izuku to take. "What's this? Why are you giving me your hair?" he asked, taking it into his fingers. Nana simply smiled lovingly at him before squeezing her crossed legs tightly around his buttocks. "My power, the power of one for all, it's yours. Take it, and become my successor as a hero, my darling Izuku, my master," she announced with a blush before taking his face into her hands passionately with all the love in her heart. "Mmhhhh, Nana Shimura sounded wetly in happiness as she withdrew her lips from Izuku's stunned face. The teenage boy was still buck naked like she was, and still docked with her in this compromising position. The softness of her legs curling around his thighs tickled him pleasantly. The same can be said for her large bosoms squishing up against his chest. All of these sensational distractions kept his mind from thinking about what sort of bizarre higher power triggered the event of him having sex with Japan's most famous hero. That is, until she smacked him awake with a tap of her finger. "Ah, I'm awake." Deku yelped and heard her giggle as she held a strand of her dark hair in front of him being offered. "I know I'm dreamy, but no need to space out now, Izu darling. I want you to take this power of mine, one for all, and follow your dream to become a hero like you wanted. It's yours now." Nana repeated, making him stare dumbly at her as he took the strand from her fingers, wondering about one for all. I don't know what to say, but can you tell me all about it? I don't understand anything right now. How we had sex, why you're giving me this power, or that quirks can be given to people." He answered with uncertainty clear in his voice. Nana cradled her chin, nodding in agreement and contemplating how to explain the whole story to him. Meanwhile, Inko had gotten up from her post-coital slump against the hallway and quietly left before she could be spotted. Her face was beet red from watching her son have intense sex with the famous superhero Gal Might, but she was even more embarrassed with herself for having climaxed to it. She couldn't figure out why she did it or why she visualized herself in that woman's place. All she could do right now is tiptoe away and try to act like she just came in through the front door. Well, now that I think about it, I believe we should wait on this power, but not too long. Nana decided and hugged an arm around Izuku's head, pulling him up close to where their noses touched. She wiggled hers into his, affectionately smiling wide with happiness as she did so. I'll explain to you why, but first a story about a sacred quirk that stalks power that came from the age of quirks first appearing in the world. After that we'll head to a special place of mine to do some working out. You're already in shape, but I need you packing muscles if you're going to handle one for all and become a hero. Gee, Gal Might, I don't know what to say. Thank you, Izuku blurted out, feeling teary-eyed until she smacked him again, causing him to stop. No crying, this is a happy moment, Izuku darling, Nana said, cupping his chin and pulling him. Izuku was still unsure whether or not them being together like lovers wouldn't involve some sort of scandal. He was underage technically, and she was a world-famous hero, but deep inside of him he knew he had to love her like she loved him. He pulled himself further into the embrace, wrapping his arms around her neck as their lips squished together in a warm, intimate embrace. Inside his body, however, the dark part of the absolute devotion quirk throbbed like a kindle fire. It yearned for more and knew of other susceptible, attractive females within the immediate area. Grabbing their clothing and putting it all back on, albeit a bit of messiness all around, Izuku noticed the door to his room was ajar and wondered if anyone saw him. Nana didn't seem to mind and just shrugged it off before reaching down and pinching his buttocks with a giggle. Once they were fully clothed, they proceeded to go downstairs so they could leave for whatever place Nana had in mind for Izuku before giving him that quirk. Just then the door opened, revealing Inko Midoriya carrying bags of groceries and looking surprised by their appearance inside the house. At least she pretended to be. The woman had went back outside and framed herself to be looking as innocent and as nonchalant as possible. Oh my, you're the famous Gal Might. What are you doing here in my house of all places? I'm such a fan, Inko gushed with starstruck eyes, again part of her acting, but she did really admire Gal Might like Izuku admires All Might. I was just dropping young Izuku off after escorting him to safety. I felt it was dangerous for him since that sludge villain attack. He's been showing me the inside of his room, and I can't help but love his fanaticism over All Might. Nana answered with a toothy smile and with hands on her hips. Izuku was blushing fiercely when she said inside of his room and hoped his mother wouldn't get the obvious idea that they had sex. Well, thank you very much. If you want to stay for lunch, that'd be great. I am cooking a meal right now, Inko added as she pulled into the kitchen and set down her groceries with a friendly smile. Afraid not, but thank you for the offer. I'm actually pretty busy with hero duty today, but before I head back I was going to take young Midoriya somewhere special. I have a feeling he's going to awaken a long-dormant quirk he didn't know he had. Nana covered with a wink directed at him. Inko looked astonished and nodded her head in agreement, unsure of why she wasn't jealous of him hanging out with another woman. Alrighty, but sure to take good care of him and bring him back before dinner. Inko waved politely with a sweet smile. Oh, I will take very good care of Izuku, all right, Nana added, giving him a predatory look with a smile. Yikes, that wasn't even subtle. We're still in front of my mother, for crying out loud, Izuku yelped, mentally blushing bright before Nana took him out of the house. When they were out of sight, Inko looked for the nearest table corner and hiked up her skirt. She planted her hands on the flat surface and started furiously rubbing herself onto it. She was pent up with lust and longing now and had no idea how to shut it off. The only thing on her mind was the sight of Izuku's large member. She wondered how it would feel inside her body and hoped she would be next to ride it. I'm a terrible mother. NNGGH. Picking up Izuku into her arms and leaping into the air with a mighty boost, Nana began making her traverse over to a special gym housed at her suite near UA Academy. Izuku blushed brightly the entire time since his head was deliberately pressed into the side of her large bosoms. Nana loved seeing him like that. When they arrived, he was introduced to her house, a modestly stylish two-story loft located somewhere a few blocks away from the academy. When he got inside, he saw plenty of pictures of herself and her predecessor, All Might in his muscular form. Nana guided him around until they reached a personal gym located in the back of the building. There Izuku saw many special workout stations that looked augmented by high-end technology. He turned his head to her with a questioning look and saw her smile back at him. This, here, Izuku darling, will be where you'll be training to inherit my quirk. These workout stations have been modified to increase potency in muscle enhancement 100-fold. I use them all the time when I want to work off some stress, not necessarily to keep my figure. It's already in prime state and rarely in need of slimming. I do hate having to avoid junk food though. She began making him look at all of them in awe. So I guess your power, one for all, is why you're so strong and fast? What does it do to your muscles? He asked, feeling curious just before Nana guided him over to a bench and patted the spot next to her for him to sit down on. As soon as Izuku did, she began telling him the story of One for All from the beginning. After listening to all of it, he was left in awe of so many secrets coming to light. He had no idea quirks can be given and stolen, no idea of such an immense power passing down through generation to generation, and had yet to understand why Nana chose him to be the next symbol of peace. It's because I see promise and potential. Not only that, but I am entirely devoted to you, Izuku. I live to see you breathe. I love to see you smile. And one day I will retire and hope you're there at my side rubbing my swollen belly in the distant future. She stated softly with such a heartfelt tone that made Izuku fall in love with her all over again. He never felt more humbled in all his life and wiped his face of tears before feeling her arms wrap around his head. Nana smiled lovingly as she rested her chin on his scalp and wiggled her bosoms into his face, making him sputter again out in embarrassment. She liked doing that to him. When all was said and done, a schedule was arranged for him to come here and work out every day after school in preparation to enter UA Academy with the quirk of One for All. After telling her he'll do his best to live up to the legacy, Nana just chuckled, sending him home with an "I love you." Izuku arrived back at his room feeling spent from the events and wowed by what had happened. Laying on his bed staring at the ceiling, he wondered about what the strange man in dark meant when he met him earlier. He also wondered what exactly he did to him before getting caught. He knew he held some kind of dark power inside of him. He felt it spark whenever Nana first touched his hand, which then led to them having raucous sex right here in his room. He blushed brightly at the memory and touched his lips, remembering the feeling of her lips on his after hearing the declaration of love and devotion from her. Izuku felt his manhood become erect through his pants and stammered out in embarrassment before pulling open the hem to marvel at his newly enhanced member. Seriously, how or when did it even get like that? Did it have something to do with what that man said earlier? About giving me some kind of quirk? He wondered before pulling open his pants, entirely revealing his long foot-length member out in the open. Eventually, he pulled his pants back down and went to change into his sleepwear clothing. Thinking about the future, he set in mind a workout regimen to build his body up. He even had a spare key to Nana's suite to use the gym. Things are finally looking up. I'll make sure to make that amazing woman proud. Izuku thought to himself, clenching his right fist readily with excitement. Little did he know, Inko was there outside of his open door, eyeing his exposed length with great fascination and longing. Quietly she crept away and felt the hot flashes erupt within her body, leading to a night of using her fingers and pretending Izuku was in bed with her. The next day began with a bright sunshine and a day of school for Izuku. He got into his uniform, sat and ate some breakfast and rushed off to attend classes, this time with a more upbeat face rather than a somber one. He had packed an extra set of clothes to work out in and felt eager to try out Nana's equipment at her place. When he ran outside, he saw Katsuki Bakugo, a former friend and longtime bully, wear his trademark scowl as he walked out of his house down the street path. His mother was there waving at him with a friendly smile and ignoring Katsuki's shitty attitude. Izuku took a moment to admire her. She was beautiful, feisty, and dauntless. Not only that, but she was confident as well. She and Izuku's mother Inko were the best of friends and often went to work out together to keep their figures safe. For some reason or another, Izuku slowed down and looked at her from afar while she waved at her scowling son. Mitsuki was in perfect shape, had spiky light blonde hair styled in a certain way that complemented her. She had a slim waist, nice wide pair of hips, and a bust that measured in a firm C-cup-sized chest. She was beautiful, and as the kids say, a total MILF. Wait, why am I having these kinds of thoughts? I must have seen her dozens of times before when we were growing up. But now, she's just so beautiful, Izuku thought to himself till she turned her head over to him and waved at him. He blushed and stammered a bit when waving back. He liked that Mitsuki was nothing like her son in terms of personality. Well, except maybe her aggressiveness, but she was without an anger-fueled temperament. Izuku quirked his eyes in surprise when she quickly looked to the sides to see if anyone else was looking. When the coast was clear, she did something surprisingly naughty for him. She pulled up the bottom of her shirt to her neck, showing off her uncovered bosoms in all glory to Izuku. "Ack!" Izuku yelped out in surprise and blushed brightly as she played with them a little in amusement. She pulled her shirt back down soon enough and became decent again. Mitsuki winked at him before entering the house, leaving Izuku to stand there wondering what he had just seen. His eyes drifted down to his crotch and noticed that was happening again. "Oh, boner, not now," he thought to himself and hunched as he walked over to school. The day came and went, and Izuku was eagerly on his way to Nana's personal gym. Taking the train for a quick ride, he arrived in no time at all and entered. Nana wasn't home. Instead, she was out doing superhero work as usual. But he saw that she left a notebook behind detailing her workout regimen to build muscle. Izuku walked up to it and opened it with a smile before getting right to work on exercising and building his muscle up. It was a lot of trial and error, but eventually he got the groove going for today's amount of work. As the sun set, he put his uniform back on and took a train ride back to his neighboring area. He walked back by Katsuki's house and saw his mother Mitsuki coming in from around the corner of the block wearing a set of workout clothes. Izuku yelped internally and felt his erection come on again once he got a closer look at her. Mitsuki was wearing a pair of tight dark spats highlighting her fit body. Her top was a tight violet tank top that clung to her sweaty chest, poking through the fabric. Aside from her headband, she also wore a pair of sweatbands and tennis shoes. Her hair was the same despite some perspiration around her body. Izuku admired the sleek sheen of her skin as she slowed to a halt and hunched over with her hands on her knees. "Talk to her." Izuku felt his thoughts kick him out of his trance. Hi, Mitsuki-san, working out long hours today?" She looked up with a questioning look, then smiled widely with a sultry gaze directed at Izuku. She gathered herself up and stood stretching her arms and twisting her body. "Oh hi, Izu-chan. Yep, gotta keep in shape every so often. Don't want to lose this body as I get older. You just coming back from school? It's awfully late," she said, making small talk and smiling friendly at Izuku. "Well, you know, I'm training my body right now to be in better shape just like you." "Funny timing, huh?" Izuku chuckled nervously as she suddenly got up close to him, standing only a breath away from his face. She was roughly a couple heads taller than Izuku, so his face was in direct line of her ample bouncy bosoms, making him gulp nervously as hid his erection. "I think you're fine enough shape already, Izu-chan. But here, let me feel your head to check how sweaty you might have gotten." Mitsuki offered and rose her head up to his forehead. Just then Izuku had a brief flash of memory and recalled how Nana seduced him with a touch. A brief flash of panic went through him, and before he could do anything to stop her, he felt her soft right hand touch the skin of his forehead. "Eh?" he yelped, feeling frozen. Mitsuki felt a sudden urge come over her body when she made contact with Izuku's forehead. Suddenly much of her thoughts were focused on him and him alone, about pleasing him and taking in his shorter form onto her naked body in glowing intimate bliss. She's had small fantasies before watching the lad grew up into a strapping stalwart kid, albeit a bit timid. She hated how her son Katsuki always bullied for not having a quirk. She often punished her angry son whenever he got too rough with Izuku and sentenced him to a week without video games. Now though, she was looking at Izuku Midoriya in a different light, a more romantic light that showed him as more appealing and masculine than he initially was. Stepping a foot or two, she analyzed his body and noticed he was sporting a rather large erection bulging through his uniform pants. Oh no, she activated that quirk, Izuku thought, noticing she was leering seductively at him. Part of him wanted to inch away and make it to his house, but the darker part of him, the one that synchronized with that unknown quirk, told him to stay and pursue it. He felt his body keep him rooted as Mitsuki brought up her hands to rub along his chest affectionately. "You know, Katsuki is out with his friends, doing whatever rowdy boys like him do for fun out late. He won't be back for a while, and I'm feeling kinda lonely in there. Care to join me for some personal exercise, Izu-chan?" Mitsuki purred seductively and cradled his head into her chest, making him feel her bosoms press into his face. Izuku was positively blowing steam out of his ears right now and feeling his erection and quirk compel him to follow his urges. "But what about Nana?" he screamed out in protest until Mitsuki pulled back and leaned down to swallow his lips into her own for a deep, passionate kiss. "GGH." Izuku felt alarm bells go off in his mind once he felt the soft, sweet sensation of Mitsuki Bakugo's lips smother his own seductively. She was warm and passionate, held nothing back as she suddenly deepened by pulling Izuku into her arms. She hummed erotically as she worked them over his face, making Izuku dizzy with growing arousal before sliding her tongue into his mouth. His eyes shot wide open in surprise when he felt it go in, and found himself melting at the sensation of her tongue swirling dominantly over his own in a taboo embrace. He stopped struggling and felt his quirk-fueled urges kick in, making him follow through with this seduction. Mitsuki continued making out with Izuku erotically, with warm, hot voices of arousal coming out of her lips. Saliva was exchanged, and each party had a taste of the other's tongue. Mitsuki kept him there for a few minutes until finally pulling back, leaving him dazed and confused while having spirals in his eyes. "Heh, let's take this inside, Izuku." She chuckled flirtatiously, and he just dumbly nodded as she pulled him into her house. The door to the house of Bakugo kicked open with Mitsuki aggressively pulling Izuku in with her arms locked tightly around his back. "HHHH, HMHH," she sounded hotly into his face, tasting him ravenously with her tongue sweeping thoroughly around the inside of his mouth as they stumbled onto the living room table, knocking things over. Izuku was on top of her, panting his hands into the table's surface, while Mitsuki wrapped her legs tightly around his lower back. He was extremely turned on right now and couldn't resist following his bodily urges for this beautiful woman. Maybe a more resentful part of him wanted to do this with Bakugo's mom out of sheer spite for all the cruel bullying he put him through over the years. He didn't know it yet, but the quirk given to him by All for One happened to be feeding off of that and fueling his drive right now. Also, it does help that Mitsuki is rather beautiful, and that Izuku had a crush on her over the years when accidentally seeing her shower with an open window. She dragged her tongue along his lips as she left his mouth to lie back on the table, breathing excitedly. She smiled at him with pure lustful eyes leering seductively at him and tightened her leg lock around his body. Izuku pulled him from her chest to get a good look at her from above. Mitsuki's wily beauty and carefree demeanor really attracted him. Sure, she shared some of Bakugo's traits like their explosiveness and aggression, but fortunately had none of his temper or attitude. Mitsuki was even catty and playful to boot. Seeing Izuku gaze at her, she smiled coyly and lifted up her sports top, revealing her bosoms before his eyes. "Go ahead, play with them all you want, young Izuku." She purred cutely with a wink, and Izuku felt the compulsion to do just that. Shrugging off his backpack, he reached his hands up to her chest and grabbed a bosom into each one, making Mitsuki squeak out cutely in arousal. He wasted no time in fondling them in slow circles and squeezing them softly at his leisure. Izuku was flat out hypnotized by her bosoms and fondled them in unison for a couple of minutes. She started breathing raggedly in arousal. Her face was blushing as her eyes honed in on his bulging crotch. She reached down with one of her hands to feel up his erection showing through his pants. Immediately Izuku winced at her touch and ceased playing with her bosoms. She snickered at his reaction and pulled herself up to wrap an arm around his neck. "Had fun? I'd say let's skip the foreplay and get right down to it. Izuku, I want to see what you're packing and make it mine." She purred hotly into his ear. "Mamach," he grunted out with a reddened face and pulled back from her embrace so he could start removing his shirt. Mitsuki was impatient though and tackled Izuku onto the ground before pulling off his clothing herself. His shirt came off, and with it came his nicely athletic chest for her to marvel at. Her eyes drifted down to his pants, and after sliding back a bit, she pulled them down, revealing his throbbing foot-length member before her eyes. Needless to say, she was very starstruck and held her cheeks in amazement while looking at it. "Holy crap, you are stacked, Izu-chan. Amazing," she gushed with glimmers in her eyes while Izuku bashfully looked away in modesty. Izuku winced when he felt one of her soft hands wrapping around the base of his member. He felt the pleasure as he felt her fingers secrete the glycerin her quirk is known to give her. It added extra lubrication, making her hand more slippery and feel even better around his length. Mitsuki knew this and judged the effect by seeing Izuku's face. Her hand squeezed a little tighter around his length and started pumping up and down in sensual high-paced ecstasy, making him pant loudly in bliss. "Mmhhh, yeah, you like that, don't you, Izu-chan? MHH?" she teased before adding her other hand to his length, gripping around his massive length with both them and pumping them simultaneously along his member. Wet, slippery friction made Mitsuki's soft hands blur as they pumped feverishly, making Izuku's member throb even more. "Oong," Izuku whimpered out in growing bliss, and she took that as an answer while straddling his legs. The mother of Bakugo started rolling herself along his thighs and waist, feeling hornier by the second as she pumped the boy's large member. She was growing with carnal hunger the more she did it, and Izuku himself felt like bursting any second now due to how good she felt rubbing his junk. Pumping it for several more minutes, Mitsuki abruptly stopped and stood up over Izuku's body and turned around. Grabbing the hem of her spats, she immediately pulled them down, revealing her moistening cunt to Izuku's stunned face. Her buttocks were nicely wide and plump. She wasn't fat, but her ass was rounded to perfection. As if she wasn't perfect enough already. Izuku felt his erection stiffen upon seeing the fleshy folds of her healthy pink and moist down there being spread open with her fingers. Mitsuki looked at him from over her left shoulder with a coy smile. She then lowered her body down to aim for Izuku's member. She was preparing to take him in reverse and spread her down lips wide open to engulf his throbbing length. "NNGGH? Ha!" Izuku groaned out in ecstasy when he felt the warm moistness of her labia and swallow up the head of his length. Mitsuki herself squealed internally in erotic bliss and proceeded to push down all the way onto him. Her cheeks met his waist with a light smack, resulting in Izuku's erection immersing itself all the way inside her cunt, breaching her cervix in the process. "Ooh, ooh, yes, this what I'm talking about. You're as big as you are cute, Izu-chan. Mitsuki crooned out gleefully, feeling Deku's length spread open her walls in ways it never had before. Her muscles contracted tightly around his member while his head nudged into her cervix, thickly threatening to push into her very womb. She settled her rear into his pelvis and rested her knees outside his waist. She gripped his ankles and began pumping her body back and forth onto his member, feeling it spear her core. Izuku groaned out again in ecstasy and reached for her Mitsuki's wide supple as with his hands. He grabbed a hold of each cheek, squeezing them tenderly and making her mule within her throat as she slammed herself down onto his member. A plethora of wet skin slapping sounds echoed throughout the living room as she began FC-king him in reverse cowgirl position happily. Her butt slapped and hit his waist in constant back and forth motion while she squeezed his length tightly into her body. Her walls clenched and her womanhood SCK'd eagerly on Izuku's length, making it throb even more as it dove in and out of her. Uha, Izuku, Mitsuki sounded out as she made her hips back and forth strongly along Izuku's waist. Her body writhed and rode with increasing motion. His member pushed into her depths, often breaching her cervix and sending sharp jolts of pleasure throughout her body. Mitsuki Bakugo felt Izuku was a great time and wanted more of this from here on out. Her body shifted positions to where she rose up a few inches to plant her feet outside his thighs with hands held behind her head in a lewd pose. Izuku felt her vessel tighten around his member as she hunched forward with her booty sticking out at him provocatively before moving. Mitsuki started bouncing herself rampantly up and down on his member, slapping her buttocks vigorously against his waist. Izuku's member blurred into her cunt at an even wilder pace, creating a series of wet squelching noises coming out of her as it fell back on him. She grunted and yelped in short bursts each time she pounded herself onto him. Every now and then her cheeks squished into his waist, giving him the sight of her creamy buttocks pressing tightly into his body. Ooh yeah, Mitsuki howled out in euphoria as her tongue hung out of her open mouth. Her bosoms jiggled and bounced along with her bouncing body. Izuku grunted and panted raggedly as he felt her walls clench down tightly on him with every slam. The table creaked and rocked as it had went on for another half hour. Mitsuki was close to climax at this point and felt Izuku's phallus begin to throb thickly inside of her quirm. She was about to lose it and wanted to do it in a very special way, so she slammed herself down onto the boy's member, pressing herself as deep as possible, wiggling side to side in unrestrained bliss. Izuku groaned loudly and felt his member push into her womb before feeling the rush of ejaculation surge through his member and inside of Mitsuki. H-hag, Izuku grunted out and pumped his hips hard into Mitsuki's mound and let out a rush of thick viscous sed into her body. The blonde mother with eternally soft skin mewled out loudly in ecstasy as she felt Izuku's seed spill into her body. Her womb felt the rush of his seed splash inside her body on a supposedly risky day. Mitsuki found the risk tantalizing and wound up squeezing her muscles around Izuku's meat to get him to come even more. He did so by grabbing her butt cheeks hard and bucking into her bottom several more times, dispersing more seed into her fertile depths. Mitsuki was on cloud 9 at this point and shuddered in ecstasy along Izuku's waist for the remainder of her climax. As it died down, she steadily rode it out until they both finished climaxing. Mitsuki slowed her bounces until she slumped back onto his chest, heaving like she just ran across the city. Her skin was sweaty and glistening with the glycerin she naturally produces. Izuku relished the softness of her body as he pressed his into her backside, spooning along the table. He was breathing fast too and felt the adrenaline rush of having sex with his bully's mother leave him with very little regret. A dark part of him always wanted to get back at Kaken for all his bullshit over the years. But still Izuku was too nice of a person to let petty thoughts motivate his actions. For some reason now, though, he didn't feel as burdened by his timid nature like he used to. That huff was amazing. Mitsuki wiggled her semi-naked body up against Izuku's lovingly. She smiled sweetly at him from below and hooked an arm around his neck, pulling him. Oh no, what did I do? I'm with Nana. I mean, how? What came over me when this happened? I gotta be honest with her. I'm crazy about that woman, but at the same time I think I'm crazy about Mitsuki too. Maybe my hormones are driving me crazy after that man put some weird quirk in me. I need to tell Nana and be upfront with her about all of this. I care too much about her to let this destroy whatever it is we have. Izuku reasoned inside his head until the fog of lust came back as Mitsuki rolled her tongue around inside of his mouth, pleasuring him. He lowered his eyes and started feeling his lips on her tongue erotically in mutually shared bliss. She tasted and slurped Izuku's lips while running a hand through his hair in affection. She never wanted this moment to end. Unfortunately, her son could be back at any moment, and they couldn't be caught like this. Not when they have more times ahead with each other. But maybe I do have some time before Katsuki comes back, Mitsuki thought to herself after she pulled from Izuku's face with a coy smile. Say, Izuku, I feel bad about the way Katsuki has treated you ever since he got his quirk. What say I make it up to you upstairs in his room before he gets back, Izuku blinked in surprise and felt this offer to be appealing. He certainly wasn't as upfront about his resentment towards Bakugo, but for some reason his primal urges guided his actions right now. Mitsuki looked beautiful being covered in sweat and felt his member twitch in arousal after hearing her words. He partially didn't want to do it because it was against his nature to be spiteful despite how much of a jerk his former childhood friend had been to him. But her alluring beauty and her wily charm called to him through that quirk. He nodded and said, yes. Mitsuki smiled widely and quickly bounced up off of his body and pulled him upstairs wearing an excited look on her face. Ooh, ah, yes, yes, ah, Izuku, Mitsuki cried out as she bounced up and down within the boy's lap, rolling her body fluidly all over his member. They were having sex in an upright seated position with Izuku holding on to her. To Mitsuki this was a sensitive area that brought her great pleasure and weakness. She positively crooned and squirmed inside of Izuku's waist, feeling her vessel squeeze down tightly on his meat. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders, keeping him close and feeling his lips squeeze her between them in tandem sequence. Her legs were wrapped around his body with ankles locked together, while her waist rolled up and down his crotch. His member was snug deep inside of her, plunging its cream-filled depths thoroughly as they FCK'd atop of Bakugo's bed. Both of them were buck naked this time, and Izuku had begun pounding his meat deeply into Mitsuki's snatch more passionately. Whereas she used to be in control, it was now his turn to dominate. He squeezed her teat between his teeth, making her shake with ecstasy as she bounced faster in his lap. The bed creaked to their movements while Bakugo's mom intensified the motions of her hips. She was writhing enthusiastically within Izuku's lap, taking him as deep as possible and feeling his length prod the walls of her womb amidst the sloshing amount of came resting inside of her. Their sweaty bodies swayed and heaved together in unfed bliss. Izuku had eventually let go of her teats and peered up into her red eyes before leaning up to lock her lips. Mitsuki hummed lovingly and wrapped her arms around him tighter while keeping her legs locked around his waist. Her form rode rapidly back and forth with climax building up once again in rising bliss. Izuku's member had ticked off all the more sensitive spots inside of her quirm, and the sheer size of it pumping in and out of her left the woman's mind melting in utter bliss. She rocked and bounced herself onto his length like this for 15 more minutes. When it came to their climax, Izuku held onto her as tightly as she smothered his face into her bosoms before leaning back to screech out in bliss. Ag! Mitsuki hollered out and Izuku grunted within her chest. The two pressed themselves into each other one last time before feeling a mutually intense climax rip through each of their bodies at the same time. Izuku pumped his hips up into her cunt, feeling the member throb, and released thick amounts of seed directly into her body. Once again Mitsuki's womb filled up with seed, and the woman felt he was abundant enough to get her pregnant if she allowed it. Such a thought enticed her as she rode out her climax all over his length. Both of them slowly came down from their high until they rested naked together in sweaty bliss. Mitsuki cuddled affectionately with Izuku as he felt his stamina leave him temporarily. He still had no idea to process all of this, but he certainly didn't mind the warmth and beauty of the woman laying on top of him. I need to tell Nana he thought, panting raggedly. After hastily getting dressed and rushing home before Bakugo could arrive, Izuku arrived at his house and noticed his dinner plate was preserved in a plastic wrap. He smiled, appreciating his mother's caring personality. Just as he was about to go put up his things, he heard a strange noise coming from his mother's bedroom. Feeling curious, he walked up the stairs and approached it, seeing a door ajar and letting his green eyes come across a most shocking sight. Inko Midoriya was there, completely naked, laying on her bed with ass up in the air and face pressed against the surface, having a plastic phallic object dip furiously into her exposed mound. Uyuwa? What am I looking at here? Izuku mentally panicked and shook with surprise. And then he felt that feeling again in his pants, making his face go sour. Oh boner, not again. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through All Girls for One Deku. I hope you found it as intriguing and thought-provoking as we did. A big shout out to AzureGigacyber for crafting such a compelling story. Don't forget to check out their profile on AE03 for more amazing works. The link is in the description below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to What If Deku 2 for more fascinating explorations into the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we're always excited to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section. See you guys in the next video.